Welcome to DasGeek. I am so excited to be here with Michael Tunnell from Tuxdigital Network. He has a show on there called Tunnell Vision, which is weekly Linux news. So make sure I'll have links down below to check all of that out. But Michael also got a System76 keyboard, and a lot has changed since I initially did my first impressions video on the System76 keyboard. Some of it is not exciting and some of it's okay, and it's going to be interesting because I'm going to have Michael's opinion as well on this at the same time. We both got one of these keyboards, and I also have hesitated to make this video, honestly, because there are so many YouTubers out there who have gotten these and absolutely adore these keyboards. And I think it's important before we get into the rest of it to say keyboards are highly preferential. People like small keyboards, big keyboards, clicky, silent, low profile, high profile. There's a reason there are a billion different formats of keyboard, and not one keyboard is going to fit everyone's interest. So while everything I cover in here may not be fantastic for this, I think if you wait till the end and kind of see our conclusion, you'll understand where we're going with a lot of these things. There's a lot here. There's a great foundation here for System76 to work with. So let's start with the good, though. The one thing that did impress me with this keyboard is its ability to do things like register all the key presses at once. Now, if you're not into keyboards, thank you for demoing. You're like the, what is that lady?
Vanna White.
How did you know I was going to say Vanna
I don't know
White?
why, but Villa Fortune, yeah.
Yeah, I like how he's like posing in a bit. It's really nice to have somebody here to do that. But it can actually register every key press at once. So if you press all the keys at the exact same time, then you can actually get all of the keys that you press to show up in a document. As you can see here in this clip, I'm doing that, and it's working absolutely perfectly. And that's something that I noticed right away when I first went from the regular like $20 keyboards you can buy at Walmart or Best Buy to a DOS keyboard. The DOS keyboard was the first one that actually advertised and branded that I was aware of. And so I remember testing that as a way to see if a cheap keyboard could do that or not. And in fact, a lot of the keyboards I have could not register the keys at the same way that the DOS keyboard did, in this case, the System76 Launch Keyboard. So that's very impressive to me. The other thing that's very impressive is the build material. The weight of this, the feel of this keyboard, the magnetic keyboard lift, all premium. Just like I said in my first impressions video, absolutely feels like a premium material, premium build keyboard. And the first time you take it out of its box, you're going to have this experience like I did in the first video. You're going to be very excited. You're going to feel like you've got something truly, truly special there. The software, I love how it works on every OS as well. This was a big deal. They could have easily been like, oh, this just works for Pop! OS. Only if you have Pop! OS do we make the app for customizing it available. But they didn't do that. They made it available to everything. And Michael, you have also played with some of the capabilities in the software, such as the multiple key presses and assigning different keys. What are your thoughts on the software overall from a macro side? Because you've played with that more than me for a reason we'll get into in a second, but you played with that more than me.
I wanted to talk about the configurator because it's not really powerful. Like most of the things you'd want it to do, like for example, the macro, you mentioned the macro thing. It really can't do any macros at all. Like, and that was disappointing for me because one of the reasons I wanted it was because of the multi-layer system having 4 layers. I thought, well, I have another keyboard, but I could get this and have 4 layers of, 100 keys, essentially. Having that much amount of macros would be amazing for me. And that didn't really work out because the configuration tool is very limited in what it can do, both like the combinations you can do inside of it, plus also the target and the source are both quite limited to 1 key per everything. So it's 1 key source, 1 key target. So if you want to do anything that's custom at all, it's not really an option right now.
Like if I want to make it so that Control D or function Control D launches some application or something.
Yeah, it's not available.
Or runs a script.
Not available.
Not available.
Not
especially
available.
The script part.
The combination of the keys is not even an option. That has to be on your operating system. The keyboard can't do that. So like there's an option where you can choose multiple keys in the configurator by holding shift down. And I thought that's what it must be for, having multiple combinations. And when I did it, all it did was make both of those keys whatever I chose as the target. Ouch. So if I chose switch to layer 2, for example, and I wanted to do, function 2 for switching to layer 2, it would actually just change both of those keys to switch to layer 2 independently. So that was rather disappointing for me in terms of the configuration stuff. But the software could be updated. They could fix it in the future, and I hope that's the case.
Yeah.
Because
that's something they definitely could fix without getting a new keyboard and make that more
absolutely
advanced. Yeah. And also the fact that the Configurator software allows you to store the instructions directly on the keyboard is a big bonus.
Yes, I love that. I love that the fact that it allows you to have that stored in the firmware, because it means you can put it on across all the different types of OSs and everything. So that is a thing that I was a big fan of, because I have another keyboard that allows me to configure it that way and store it on the firmware. Although that keyboard requires me to do all the configurations in Windows, which is very annoying that I have to do it in one OS. And I do really like the fact that this allows me to do it in whatever I want. But at the same time, there's not much to configure. So once I went in there, changed the RGBs and that sort of stuff, well, it's really all you can do. Like, there are cool options for the RGBs, though. So I do like this one that is like a spiral galaxy thing. That's what they call it. So it like spins in a circle in a spiral. That's cool. But that's where the configurator kind of stops being useful.
Yeah, the ability for the RGB to customize it and have all these different effects is very cool. But it's also something, frankly, that you see on $60, $70 keyboards. Right. I mean, I'm glad I have it, because if it wasn't, I'd be like, dang, that's on $60, $70 keyboards. But it's not something to make me go, oh my gosh, this $278 keyboard is worth $278 because I have all these RGB things. But I'm happy, or $285 keyboard, I'm happy that it's there at least as an option. And the RGBs are highly customizable, including when you go into different layers. It allows you to set RGBs for those layers, so you know you're in those layers. And so there's some really neat things that it can do with the RGB, which is cool. So the reason why I mentioned at the very beginning of this video that I haven't had a chance to play with things like macros and stuff as much is because literally at the moment I was editing, or I'd finished editing and had published my YouTube video on System76, the keyboard completely died and would not turn back on.
Right.
So again, $285, but this did not make me be like, oh, do not go out and buy this keyboard. I didn't go on Twitter and start throwing a rant or anything, because this happens with everything. If you buy a $900 video card, you could just happen to get the one out of 150,000 they made that happens to die. So the keyboard would not turn on at all. And I reached out to their customer service when that happened, and I opened a support case. And I wanted to see, this is going to be a great opportunity to see how customer service is with System76. Again, I'm paying a premium price at $285 for keyboard. I expect some really premium customer service, like what people experience sometimes at Apple or other places like that when you're paying that extra price tag. So I opened my support case on 4/12. I received confirmation and acknowledgement on 4/12 from one of their technicians to say, yeah, hey, if we've tried all these different things, it's not working, we'll go ahead and get you an RMA. I didn't see the RMA the next day, so I followed up the next day and asked, hey, is that RMA going to be coming? I heard nothing on 4/13 until 4/15. Then I sent another follow-up on 4/15. And then on 4/19 is when I finally got a message back, but only after I opened another ticket to say, hey, can you look at the first ticket and tell me why I can't get an RMA? So I finally sent it back, and then I got the keyboard back on 4/27. So it took all of that time. Well, it shipped back to me on 4/27. So it took all of that time. Now, it didn't take a huge amount of time for them to repair it, but the customer service was very lacking. I didn't like the fact that I had to follow up so many times. Now, everybody I dealt with was super nice.
Right.
Nobody was rude. Nobody was, anything but professional and nice. But just the fact that there was so much time in between something so simple that if we had solved and decided on 4/12 that we needed an RMA, why did this process break down so bad? So that's something, again, I would love for them to look at. And then when I got my keyboard back, it came in a box that was completely torn to pieces. You all will see pictures of it here, but it's far worse even in person. And it seemed like it was taped with like Scotch tape together, to the point where the box was tore open and I could look inside the box and see all of the parts, the individual keycaps, the key puller, all of that in there, and any of that could have fallen out. Thankfully, somehow, miraculously, nothing did. But a lot of times when I've gotten things from System76, the box is like warehouse dirty with scuff marks and everything else all over it. And it just doesn't give you the best impression of, I hate to be the guy focusing on a box, but it doesn't give me the impression I bought something premium when things are not really looking good when they get here to me, especially with the launch keyboard.
Right.
The problem is I got the keyboard back, and then I noticed that every time I was hitting Control V, it was double pasting whatever I was hitting Control V with. So it was coming across the screen 1, 2, 4 times. At times it was all over the place, and this messed me up a lot with my password, because I go into Bitwarden and I would copy a password and I'd go to paste it, and then it would paste it twice and say you got the wrong password. But I couldn't tell it pasted it twice because I have long passwords to begin with. I just realized this when I opened it up in LibreOffice and started testing, that it was doing that. And I showed that to you too, that it wasn't working. So I opened yet another ticket with System76, and this time they told me to remove the actual keycap and the switch, which I did and put it back in, and then things seem to be working right now, but I don't know how long that will last. But
wasn't the switch bent or something?
It looked like the pin for the switch was slightly bent, like they had taken it out possibly when they were repairing it, and when they put it in, it was slightly bent. So I took some pair of pliers and straightened it out, and then when I plugged it back in, it seems to be working fine now. But how long that will last, because if you've ever taken a processor out and tried to put the pins back, it's a very delicate process, and these are little pins that could break off really easily. So that's interesting. I'll talk to their customer service and see if they're going to send me a replacement for that. So that's kind of one piece of the experience with this keyboard. So again, everything until you touch the keys, premium, amazing, one of the best looking keyboards as far as like just the premium feel of it and such, and the thickness, and you could tell they built this thing to last. Once you put your hands on the keyboard, though, and start typing, that's where things don't go so well.
You start seeing some flaws when you start using it. There's for a variety of reasons. First of all, for me, I couldn't get used to the default layout. So I almost immediately, after maybe using it for 5 minutes, like, no, we can't do this. And I just moved the keys around the bottom row because they're arbitrarily in the wrong position. Like, if you look at most keyboards, whether they're Mac or Windows, this does not fit those styles of any of them. So it just was weird to use it because it was just special to itself. So I switched it back to the normal Windows type of keyboard layout because it was a lot easier, and that's what I'm used to. And I think that's what most people are used to because that's how keyboards come by default, pretty much always. So once I did that, it was easier for me to type, but it was still kind of wonky and clunky at times.
I don't know what it is, and I cannot get used to typing on this thing. I've tried to move keys around to adjust to it, and one of the things Carl, CEO of System76, commented on my last video and said they'd made it specifically so that they had spaced the keys, even though it's on a mini key form factor, just the same as a full-size keyboard spacing, so it really shouldn't be that off. But somehow there is absolutely no way for my hands to get used to it. This is from somebody who can type on an Asus laptop keyboard. Like, we know they purposely move crap all over the place, and I have no issues generally after a couple of minutes of adjusting to a keyboard. I cannot, no matter what I do, adjust to this thing. It's so, I don't know what's off either. There's this weird thing where the escape key down to the tab key are perfectly in line, and then it has just the slightest indent where the caps lock and the shift and control are. And I am just theorizing here that that's enough of an offset for my hands that I'm always typing or hitting or mistyping the wrong key. And then the backspace and the delete key constantly get me confused. And even if I switch them, I still somehow get confused with it. And the split space bar is not terrible, but it's not my favorite thing either There's just so many issues with me trying to get used to typing. And I don't have this problem with my Corsair, with my Rocats, with my Gearheads, with any of the other dozens of keyboards that I have, not to mention all of the laptops that I have. I don't have this issue with typing on them, but this keyboard specifically, I cannot get used to. And so again, you may have a completely different experience. This is just my experience, but it is interesting that Michael told me he had the same problem as well, which just makes me wonder what it is about this keyboard that makes it so difficult to learn from a typing perspective. There's some real uniqueness they tried to do here with the keys, and I'm just not quite sure it worked.
I personally do not like the very mini style keyboards. I like the kind where it's essentially you take a full-size keyboard and knock off the numpad
Yeah.
and everything else is the same.
Right.
That's my preference. But I do see that there are some benefits to the layout, how they did it. Like the 2 double space thing is kind of cool because it also made me realize I only use one thumb most of the time when I hit the space bar.
So you could use that key for something else.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's kind of cool.
There are some cool things. And the other thing I want to mention I really like about this keyboard is the integration with the hub. The hub on the back of the keyboard is very nice. So this allows you to plug in other peripherals, USB-C, USB-A style peripherals, whether it's spare hard drives and other things. I did notice, unfortunately, though, YubiKey does not work with this style of hub. I know this is an issue online where certain hubs that people buy, different versions of it, do not work with YubiKey and other versions do. This particular hub does not. And that's unfortunate because I could see how much of an advantage it is to put your YubiKey in the back of this and just be able to, as you're typing, hit it to get a password in there or a 2-factor authentication. When unfortunately, it doesn't work with this. So it's a really cool feature, though, to have the hub, but I would love for them to have in a future version the YubiKey option. And listen, at the end of the day, System76 took some risks here. They manufactured this in the US. They took the passion and love of the engineers and things that had all of these ideas with keyboards and tried to mash it together into this. And this is version 1. I think this could be one of the greatest keyboards on the market and worth $285 all day long. But it's going to need some more work to be able to accomplish that. This isn't it. This is kind of like a prototype, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a cool prototype. The RGB and stuff, some of the bleed through with the keys, the positioning of the keys, even some of the typing on the keys doesn't seem even.
They're
on
misaligned. The numbers are misaligned, and they also have, like, if you look at the most keyboards, they have everything aligned to the top or aligned to the bottom of the key, and there is kind of a mix match of sometimes they're aligned in the bottom, and like the numbers seem to go up and down and up and down, and then the other ones, the symbols look like they're aligned in the middle of that area. Yeah. So it just kind of feels off for some reason, but it's not like it's a deal breaker. That isn't a big deal necessarily. It's just like all of these little things together create this feeling of, is it worth that much money? And I'd have to say no.
At
not really.
$60, I would be like, fine. At $285, I'm like, what do we do with this thing? Because I was at Micro Center. I have a video of me and Michael at Micro Center, and I was looking at the DOS keyboard, and Michael will tell you I was very much wanting to just grab it and buy it, but I have a $285 keyboard sitting here, and that keyboard, a DOS keyboard, is about $148, $160, something like that.
Yep.
And I've used these keyboards. They're absolutely fantastic. Razer, the Rocat Vulcan, which, Michael, you were typing on. I showed you it. That's a beautiful typing keyboard. Of course, these are full size. I have Corsair mini keyboard. I have a Headgear mini keyboard. You tried my Headgear, which is a $20 mini keyboard, and you had less mistypes on it because everything was aligned.
45 seconds to get used to it. Yeah.
It's just the case. I know there's a lot of people on YouTube and other things that are blowing up about this keyboard, and I think a lot of that has to do with they got a sample sent to them for free. But I spent my hard-earned money on this, and so my expectations are a lot higher for what this keyboard should be with that. And I hope, again, this is a preferential thing that you try this and you absolutely love it. But I have to be honest with my fans, that's what they expect out of me. And I can't release a video, especially after the intro video or the unboxing where I was talking about how much I like this, and not do a follow-up and say, I've had some really bad experience. The customer service experience wasn't great. The experience of the keyboard dying, while it happens sometimes, wasn't great. The return I got wasn't great. And the typing experience on it, now that I have it, I think working mostly, isn't great either. And so I would save your money and look at some of the other alternatives out there. If you like the mini form factor, there's lots of them. And I'm very excited, though, for the idea of a launch keyboard 2 to see what they could do with that, taking some of this feedback, making some improvements. They've got the foundation here for something amazing. This is not it, but the foundation's there.
Yeah, the build quality is impressive, and a lot of the choices in terms of like concepts of what they're wanting to do, I do think there's a lot of potential there, and the next version could meet that potential. But like you said, right now, this is kind of nowhere near it, honestly. And for me, I do want to change the keys, and I do plan on doing that because I don't like the look of these keys either. So it's like a modern, high-quality keyboard with the build quality and the RGB, and then it has a color code, like a color design of like an old Model M type Commodore 64 thing. Like, I like those things for that era, but I don't like it for a modern keyboard, so it looks kind of weird, and I don't like it personally, and I'm going to be changing every key on mine.
Well, that's an important thing you mentioned. You can replace the switches. You can replace the keys. Again, that's more money. I don't feel like that should be the first thing you're thinking of when you spend $285 on a keyboard, but you can. Also, this is supposed to be their quieter switches. We got the purple Royals.
The purples, yeah, both of us.
And they're way too loud. They're too loud for podcasting or anything else, even though I clicked on their little sound thing on their site, and it sounded like they would be quiet. I don't think these keys are lubed. I'm not 100% on that, but they're just very loud, and they do not sound like anything I can use in a production environment and not have that sound come into my microphone. So like Michael, I'm like, okay, now I've got to, if I want to keep this and try to get some value out of this, resell it on eBay and or replace all the switches and keycaps, and that's going to be a hard decision for me. But you know what's not a hard decision?
What's that?
Bitwarden. Bitwarden is not a hard decision at all. I've loved Bitwarden from day one. They're the greatest password manager out there. I use them on everything, whether I'm on my desktop, laptop, my phone. I have Bitwarden everywhere I go. And Bitwarden also, if you get their $10 premium account, it's free, by the way, you can sign up. If you get a $10 premium account, you can use your YubiKey with it. No problems at all. You can even use Yubico Authenticator for your phone, so that you can have your one-time passwords there as kind of a secondary precaution. You get 1 gigabyte encrypted file storage, 2-step login with YubiKey, Vault Health Reports, Bitwarden Authenticator, priority customer support for $10 a year. Inflation, Bitwarden is not inflating the price like every other company is right now. It's still $10 per year for the greatest password manager on the planet. They keep it encrypted locally on your device so you know your passwords are safe and secure from prying eyes. You can use it on anything. Go to bitwarden.com/tux. That's the most important part. Let them know we sent you. Bitwarden.com/tux and get started now. I want to thank Bitwarden for sponsoring this channel and the entire Tuxdigital Network. I want to thank you for coming in here and giving your opinion on this keyboard.
Absolutely.
Again, I did not want to do this video. I do not want to badmouth a product from a company that has done so much for Linux, from Pop! OS to their Thelios to what they've done with the Clevo laptops and the Secure Boot and Core Boot. All of the things they've done over there are fantastic, but $285 for a keyboard, I think there's some more work here to be done before this gets released on a massive scale. Foundation's good. There's a lot of little tweaks they can make, but those tweaks are possible, and through some firmware updates and software updates, even as is, they could make this even a better experience. So I'm hoping they take this feedback and turn this into an even better experience. Let us know your comments below if you've picked one of these up or what your favorite keyboard is. Maybe you have an absolute favorite keyboard you love for multiple operating systems. I would love to hear about it and try it out. And until next time, get out there.
Keyboards!